all my friends will say, I don't know how you got married, because I was on the other side saying, I don't know what men are doing in this world. We can actually survive without you.
I was shocked when you got married.
Wow. The past couple of weeks I've been out. Like I couldn't cook, I couldn't stand for long, I couldn't bath myself, I couldn't. The guy was there.
Sure. Husbands, don't fight your wife. Okay, fight the issue. Fight for unity. Don't fight to be right. Don't fight for your glory, but fight for the unity of your marriage. And do you guys speak about that? Or is this the first time
You know your friend, does he speak about things? Does he?
Hey, what's up? Welcome to That Husband Podcast with me, Blaque Newborn. Here we are husbands who aren't where we want to be, but certainly are not where we used to be. We are imperfect, always failing forward, trying to know better so that we can do better. Hey, what's up? Welcome to That Husband Podcast with me, Blaque Newborn. This is where husbands try to know better so that we can do better. Before we get into this episode, we want to thank everybody who's been supporting us. If you're joining us for the very first time, here's how you can join this family and actually support us. You can click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you're updated on every single episode we drop every Wednesday at 11:30. If you're a regular and you want to know how you can support us because you found value from the content that we're putting out, well, two ways. The first one is by buying us coffee, and you can hit the link in our comment section and buy us as many coffees as your heart desires so that we are energized to keep on making more of this content. The second way you can support us is by booking me as a speaker or an MC for your next event. And you can do that by sending us an email at booking@blacknewborn.com. That's booking@blacknewborn.com. We're going to get straight into today's episode. If you've been following us in the month of Feb, you realize that we were celebrating husbands. Valentine's is historically, traditionally known as the month or the holiday or the day where the special attention is on our wives, is on the ladies. And so we said on this podcast, man, part of what our mission is as we really encourage husbands to know better so that they can do better. And Valentine's, we need to celebrate those husbands who've been showing up, husbands who've been trying, husbands who are really taking the call to be husbands over their lives very seriously. And they really want to show up in ways that are meaningful, not just for them, but for those that they are leading, those that they love. And so we invited three ladies to come help us so that we can take yellow to become the new red. You know, historically, Valentine's is known for the red color. And so we said, man, our color here is yellow. And so we want to make yellow the new red as we celebrate husbands. And so that's where the focus has been. Man, the engagement has been super dope. Both episodes that we've dropped, first one with my wife and secondly with Sis Jabulile Mazibuko from Man Speak, who came through and spoke about just how her divorce woke her up to see just some of the things that she contributed to that and how she wants to encourage husbands now and wives as well to stay in their marriages and actually fight for their marriages, because man, it's just hard when you experience divorce. Divorce is really like a death that you experience, and there's a whole lot of other things that come with the aftermath of that. And so she just wanted to say, as we celebrate husbands, how do we encourage you? And a lot of you have really commented on the episode I had with my wife and Sis Jabulile's episode as well, and there's just been a lot of positive and good and great responses as we try and champion husbands and husbandhood in our country. So shout outs to you. This is the third and final installment in that series. From next week, we're going to continue with our normal programming. We're going to have another husband and we're going to chop it up and speak about what it means for us as husbands to become better. Right? And so now we want to close this series off just with a couple of reflections, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So you'll see an interview that I did with Grace's wife. Grace is part of the team here. Grace says he never wants to be in front of the camera. As a husband, I'm like, man, you are really not giving us one as a team here. So instead we said we're going to bring his wife so his wife could celebrate him on camera and help us celebrate other husbands who are watching this, and other husbands who will definitely benefit from this. Right? So check out this clip and then you'll hear from me afterwards. For those who don't know who Eleanor is, she is Grace's wife.
By the way, when you say Eleanor in Uganda, people will be so confused.
Elena.
If you have, yes.
Elena.
Thank you.
Sorry, you're on South African
Yes.
soil.
Oh,
You decided to have an English name, so we calling it the way the English would call it to pronounce it, Eleanor, but Elena. Okay, that's fine. But Elena is Grace's wife. Grace is somewhere behind one of these cameras, if not all of them. So, anyway, Eleanor, we compiling this resource where we trying to get this book in the hands of husbands who don't have the privilege of brotherhood or young men who don't believe in marriage. And so, season 1, we asked our guests to give us names of people who inspired them to get married. But in season 2, we're asking our guests to define what a husband is. You've been married for how long now? 4 years. Yes.
4 years.
4.
Yo, it's been long.
You have an honors.
It feels like 20, but it's 4.
Yeah. Guys, I'm going to be playing a therapist today because your husband is in the room. So I might be stopping fights. 4 years. What would you say a husband is?
A husband. From experience, right?
Yeah.
Like from what I've seen or experienced.
Yeah. I mean, you've lived with a husband for 4 years.
Yes, which feels like 20. But what does a husband mean or look like for me? It's a safe place.
Okay.
Just safe place. Because I've seen it with some husbands, and that's what I appreciate most. Safe place, and then second to that is companionship. But number 1 is safe.
Safe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you felt safe?
Yes, I have.
For the past 4 years.
Okay, black newborn. I still want to be married, ne?
Call me whatever you want to call me.
Among the things that I want to walk out of here today with is my marriage.
That's fine. We're here to celebrate your husband.
Yes.
And other husbands who are watching.
Yes.
So, I mean, I asked because it's such a particular and a pointed term and a loaded term. Because most women don't feel safe, you know.
Yeah.
Whether that would be physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually. So it's telling as we think about celebrating husbands that you would use that word for your husband. In what ways has he made you feel safe?
So it's many things, but the one big thing is that he has been there. So there's no time that I've felt like I'm alone or in trouble and I've turned and he's not there.
Sure.
And that makes me feel like this guy has got my back. So whether we're both in trouble, whether it's only me in the dark and I really need someone to take me out of that and I turn and he's there right, holding his hand out to pick me up. So that makes me feel like I'm safe with him, and he's got me, and that's what safety is for me. That he is there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you know you once said that before you got married? I mean, you know, so you could think that's something all humans want, but a lot of us go into marriage looking for all the Hollywood stuff.
Yeah.
Safety is such a basic human need, but like a very, very important human need. And you don't realize that you need it until you don't have it. You know, it's like it's like having a bad MC. I'm plugging myself. You don't realize how much you need an MC for an event until you have a bad one.
MC.
Right?
Yes.
Until you like, this guy is doing such. So I just thought he came here to do announcements.
Did they pay that guy?
Yeah.
So
I feel like safety is one of those things. You don't realize how much you need it until it's not there.
Yeah.
So did you go in saying I want safety, or did you wake up to it and realize, man, in the process of the 4 years, see, this guy is actually safe? Like,
it's a bit of both. So growing up, I saw a couple of one is my grandfather and another one is my uncle, just being safe. Like even for us, the grandkids and their nieces, like you just can tell them anything. But like you've said, within the 4 years we've been married, there's been ups and downs and storms, and I've experienced that. So yes, I saw it, but I didn't necessarily know it's what I needed. So all my friends will say, I don't know how you got married, because I was I was on the other side saying, I don't know what men are doing in this world. We can actually survive without
I
you.
was shocked when you got married.
Wow. But yeah. I know for a fact, you and a couple of my friends. Yes, I know that it was written all over me. Like, I repulsed being around men, and it's maybe also experience, but that's a talk for another day. But
Yeah,
because of what I had experienced and what I had gone through dating and
yeah,
all that, I was like, no, I'm done.
sure.
Peace. I'm happy. I will survive.
Mm,
And then this guy comes along and his intentions were clear, and I'm
mm.
like, okay, let's try it. Okay, I'm not like your wife who spent 5 years being not in the marriage. Me, I was there,
Yeah.
but it was like 80%, not 100. It's almost like that weird thing. I don't even know how we do it, but I was there, but not there.
Yeah,
And then he started showing up,
yeah.
and he showed me that he wants this thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, then I said, let's try it.
Sure.
So I've experienced it in the
Mhm.
4 years, and I have seen it previously.
Safety, man, that is definitely a big one. Big one that will probably need an episode on its own. In fact, I'm just putting that down in our books that we should probably circle back to this particular topic so that we can speak about safety. Because let's be honest, there are, countless women who do feel unsafe in their relationships, in their marriages, but there's also this other side of tons of women who are enjoying this gift, this benefit of safety. But like we said in this clip, safety is one of those things that is a fundamental human need, but we don't speak about it quite often until you feel unsafe, until safety has been threatened or taken away from you. Then you realize how much that we do need safety, especially if you are a wife, especially if you're a woman in this case. And so, what I want to do now is really just give 4 further encouragements to husbands, particularly as we celebrate husbands in Valentine and we close off the series, to kind of say, how can you create a safe environment for your wife if you're a husband? And how can you yourself be a safe place that your wife can confidently come to, knowing that you won't be judged, knowing that you'll be taken care of, knowing that you will really be seen? 4 things, man. The first one is that emotional safety precedes physical intimacy. Emotional safety precedes physical intimacy. I think this is a big one just because of how we are wired as men compared to our counterparts, compared to our women, compared to our wives. In fact, in an upcoming episode, so stay tuned, right? This episode is going to pull through. We shot an episode with Tembantuli, who's been on the podcast before. Dear friend of mine, we asked him to come back and we chopped it up even further, man. That one is going to be one for the book. So please stay tuned for that. But what he says in that episode is just highlighting the difference in our makeup as husbands and wives. Men are wired differently. So he uses the scenario of stress. We come back from work, we stressed. Our wives come back from work, they stressed. When I come back from work and I'm stressed, I want physical intimacy in order to relieve my stress. But that's not how my wife functions. In fact, she needs her stress to be taken away in order for her to be physically intimate. So, what's the thing that we're going to use to take away her stress? Well, that's emotional safety. So, my wife needs to feel emotionally safe first. That's going to relieve her stress. Then she can open up to physical intimacy. But in the opposite or the inverse, I need physical intimacy in order for my stress to be relieved. But so if I'm going to be a place of safety, if I'm going to create a safe environment, I need to be aware of this, that my wife needs emotional safety first before she can open up. So I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of, rather, and conscious of, so that we can be creating an emotionally safe environment for our wives, but for ourselves as well, that we need to be emotionally safe places for our wives, so that if our wives speak of their fears, they speak of their stresses, they speak of their insecurities, they speak of deep-seated fears, man, they know that they can come to us and they won't be judged, they'll be heard, they'll be seen. We won't just be quick to provide solutions, but we will be quick to hear, to hug, to ask, man, what would you need me to do in this situation to help you? Let me go to the second one. Number 2, how can we create a safe environment? How can we ourselves be places of safety? Consistency builds trust, not just big gestures. Consistency builds trust, not just big gestures. Man, it's easy, especially as we think about Valentine's, for us to think, how can I just splash gifts, spoil my wife, buy these big elaborate gifts for her, and that's the thing that's actually going to help her feel safe around me, and that's cool, right? And she's probably going to appreciate those things, but the thing that she actually needs from you, so that she knows she's in a safe environment, or to know that you yourself are a safe place for her, is that you need to create consistency. In fact, my wife challenged me on this recently, right? You guys have seen the episode that I did with her, and we spoke about my own personal domestic personality, rather, and how that domestic personality kind of created a safe environment for us in our home. And recently, I slacked 1 or 2 days, and then she pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, man, listen, I think you are messing up your consistency." And she kind of painted this very elaborate picture of how my inconsistency creates inconsistency for the rest of the family, and how they couldn't function. She particularly couldn't function in her role because I was dropping a few balls, man. So, but consistency builds trust. And so, if you're going to create a safe environment, if you're going to be a safe place yourself for your wife, man, be consistent. If you're going to say, we're going to pray every single day at this specific time, make sure that you think about it. Consider, your work rhythms, consider your family rhythms, so that when you make that plan, you can be able to keep that plan consistent. You can keep going on that thing. And once you do that, that really instills confidence in your wife. That makes her feel safe. That makes her feel that she's in a safe environment. So I'll say that again, man. Consistency builds trust. In fact, we can say consistency builds safety, not just the big gestures, not the big elaborate gifts, or, when you want to do spring cleaning in the house, I'm going to clean everything once off. That's cool. And you should do it, right? To love on her, to serve her, to care for her. But consistency is way better. She can trust and rely on consistency. She doesn't know when the big gestures are going to come, right? But consistency, she knows. On Tuesday, he's going to do this. Wednesday, he's going to do this. This week, he's going to do this. This month, he's going to do this, compared to just one big elaborate gesture. Number 3, strength is in self-control, not dominance. Strength is in self-control, not dominance. This is pretty self-explanatory. If we're going to create safe environments, we ourselves are going to be a safe place for our wives. Man, let's not be dominant. Do not assert your will over your wife's will. Do not assert your agenda over your wife's agenda. In fact, once you become one in marriage, that's what you need to be doing. She's there to help you because you are deficient in other areas. You are lacking in other areas. You're incomplete in other areas. And so for you to run a tight ship, for you to care for those that God has given you, man, don't be dominant, but instead consider her, listen to her. She must be seen. See her. And that's going to require a lot of self-control on your part as a husband. Man, as a man, I know maybe it's just a me thing, but I think a lot of us as men, as husbands, struggle with not wanting to be told to do stuff. We just want to do things at our own time, own pace, with our own agenda in mind. But man, if you're actually gonna be a leader that creates a safe space, or you're gonna be a safe place yourself, you need to know how to control your urges. You need to know how to control your anger. You need to know how to control, your own disappointments. Yes, your wife might have disappointed you, but for that disappointment not to spill over, and therefore you mistreat her, or you suddenly become too dominant, or dominant, in fact, in J period, right? For you to not get there, you're gonna need to control yourself. You're gonna have to put yourself at the altar of your brothers to say, gents, I'm here surrendering. Please help me. If you know that you're somebody who tends to be on the dominant side and you tend to assert your will over your wife's will, just remember that. If you're going to create a safe place and you're going to yourself be a safe place, strength is in self-control and not in dominance. Number 4, your wife shouldn't have to compete for your attention. Whew. Your wife shouldn't have to compete for your attention. Man, that's another thing that makes our wives feel very unsafe, right? That she has to compete with your PlayStation. She has to compete with your work. She has to compete with you going to play golf. She has to compete with you going to Ishisanyama or Kawash, your Plomanama out. She has to compete with, Tembi at work, who seems to have more of your attention. She is part of your team, yes, and you have to work with her. But man, Tembi is SMSing you, WhatsApping you, calling you outside of work hours. Your wife should not have to compete for your attention. She said she's giving up her life so that she can be with you. And you promised to take care of her, look after her heart. You promised to make sure that she can become a better person because she is with you. She could have been with many other men, but she bought into your vision. She bought into your agenda. She bought into your direction. And she came because you promised that she will become a better person. So now that she's in, man, she shouldn't compete for your attention because that's the sure thing that's going to make all her insecurities flare up. It's going to make her feel unsafe. And so if you're going to create a place of safety, man, remember this. Your wife shouldn't be competing for your attention. All right, let's look at the second clip and then we'll jump straight back into it. All right. Low lights for the past 4 years.
I think the biggest, I would call it a challenge, was me living with someone. Guys, it's so hard. I got married when I was closer to my 30s.
Yes.
So living with a guy that 24 hours,
Yes. Yes.
he will tell you clothes not being inside the laundry basket disturbed me so much.
He doesn't put the clothes in the laundry basket.
He puts them beside.
Yes.
I'm like, inside. Of course, when we talk about Blaque,
Judgment.
yes, you must judge him.
I am judging him.
Thank you.
But
you probably judge all your male friends.
I stopped judging them. It's a waste of judgment.
Exactly. Then I realized it's a wastage of my emotions.
It's a waste of judgment.
So living with someone, getting used to how they do things, and it's not even like it's like the worst thing that could happen.
Yes.
But yeah, getting used that there's someone in your space and living together. Another low light. Do I have? It's almost like stuff that I needed to learn and unlearn. Yeah, we are from different backgrounds.
Yes.
He was raised differently. I was raised differently. Some things are similar, but it's also a thing of, no, we did this growing up, so this is how I do stuff. And finding a middle ground and saying, if it does not harm the bigger picture, there are things he can withstand from me. There are things I surely can withstand from him.
Yes.
And there's always that middle ground. I don't think, the rest of the stuff are stuff that happened, man. Life. Like me getting sick and he needs to be there. Sometimes I would feel sorry. And one of my friends told me, why are you feeling sorry for him? He signed up for this knowing.
That was part of his vows.
Yes.
Through sickness and in health.
Exactly. It's David, one of our friends, who says, we started from the worst.
Yes.
So in sickness instead of in health. Sure. But no. It's been good because we have both grown and we've been both challenged to love. To love harder, to love better, and to love right.
That is Buck. Having to adjust your life to live with somebody. For some people, it tends to take long for them to adjust. For others, they kind of snap into it because they either grew up in a big family and then even when they moved out of the house and went to varsity, they lived in a commune or with other roommates. And so by the time they're getting married, it's kind of instilled in you. It's in your DNA that you've lived with people. And so it's an easy adjustment. But for some of us, and you need to be aware of this when it comes to your spouse. If you're a husband, man, be aware of your own wife's sensitivities when it comes to this. Maybe she comes from a small family. Maybe she didn't live outside of home all her life. And the first time she actually lived outside of her mother's house or father's house was with you, right? And so then she comes in and she has to adjust and think about what it means and looks like now that, parents are not there. She hasn't had the experience of living with roommates, even though she might have had a sibling or siblings. But now this is a totally different ball game because, she's essentially part of the people who are in charge here. When your mother says, this is my house, and this is her house now, right? And so marriage might have hit her, as a ton of bricks in her face, and she's a bit shocked, and she needs to adjust to this new reality. So I'll say, be aware of those sensitivities. Number one, wife, this might be your husband as well, and now you're expecting him to just come in and take charge, just like your father was in charge, or if you lived with your mother was in charge, and maybe you're not aware of your husband's sensitivities. He didn't grow up, with people around him, etc. Or even if he did, he might have been like a younger brother, and so he's always been told what to do, and so now he comes in and he needs to assume the leadership role, and he's struggling a little bit, and so you kind of need to be aware of his sensitivities as well. But again, we are celebrating husbands this Valentine's. Yellow is the new red, and so, man, we want to speak directly to husbands now. So 3 things to kind of help orient your mind as you think about living with somebody. You might be new to marriage, and this is very important for you as you enter. You might be 10 years in, and this is things that you, one, might not have been aware of, or secondly, things that you have been aware of and you're practicing. This is just a refresher. So I'm just going to give you 3 things here. One, serve in the small things. They matter more than you think. Serve in the small things. They matter more than you think. Again, if we're aware of each other's sensitivities and we kind of pick out all the small areas in which we can either, one, complain about those things, right? Because again, if you make hills out of moles, things are gonna really blow out of proportion. And man, you might sit there, 5 years later and realize, man, that was actually just like a little thing, and we turned it into a mountain. And now it's kind of shaped the posture of our marriage. It's shaped who we are as a couple, just because we made such a small thing a big thing. So take advantage to serve in those small things, right? I've shared this on this podcast millions of times. My wife leaves cupboards open, right? And so I'm like, man, I can either complain and chase after her like a tyrant of a parent, and fail to realize that she's an equal, she's an adult, she's old enough, she just has her own quirks. I can follow her and just be like, oh, you didn't close this, or not even say it verbally, just bang cupboards after her. And man, that's not going to be loving. That's going to totally make her feel insecure. That's going to make her feel like now she can't live in this home because here's this tyrant who can choose to serve in the small things, but instead he takes the small things and makes them into hills, into mountains, into atomic bombs when they're not supposed to be. So take opportunity to serve in the small things. They matter more than you think. So I don't follow my wife around to close the cupboards, but instead, when she's left the kitchen or left the room and the cupboards are open, I say to myself, I don't say to her, I say to myself, man, cupboards being open irritate me, but this is an opportunity for me to love my wife. Do I love my wife? I love her. Do I care for her? I do, right? So now I could have been doing what? Watching YouTube. I could have been sleeping on the couch. I could be here serving in the small things, right? So take those small things as opportunities for you to serve, to demonstrate your love, and to really acquaint yourself in what it means practically to live with somebody as you guys share a space. Number 2, make decisions as a team, not as a boss. Make decisions as a team, not as a boss. That's very clear. You have become one. When you said, I do at the altar, you became one. The rest of your marriage, you working out what oneness looks like. You can be one faith-wise, and you believe the same things. You have principles and values that kind of guide who you are, and you guys believe those things. But then there's many other areas where you might still be on opposite ends, and you have to work towards the middle together. That could be finances, that could be parenting, that could be sex, that could be your social circles. Do you have friends? Do you not have friends? Should I go play golf? Should I stay here? Should my wife go to the social with the girls or not? You working those things out. So you already won, but your oneness is finding expression as you live. And so you need to make decisions as a team, not as a boss. And as a husband, you might feel the temptation to say, as the leader of this family, as the one who's supposed to be the head of this relationship, man, I'm the one who needs to make decisions and the thing ends with me. And in some sense, yes, you're going to be responsible for your relationship, especially if you believe in God. God is going to hold you accountable as a husband, but man, he's put you in a team so that you can make decisions together. He knows that you're incomplete, you're imperfect, and you lack certain things that only your wife can help you with. And so make decisions as a team. So whether that's decisions around the household, so domestic decisions, make them together. And some of those decisions at a practical level might not mean that we're sitting down and deciding, are we buying brown bread or white bread? And that's a decision that we need to make together. But man, at least you've made a decision about one of you deciding on who's buying what kind of bread. Okay, so I'm like, man, my wife is in charge of buying bread. Whether she buys brown bread, whole wheat, she buys arosaskosem, whatever. That's on her. But we've made a decision together as a team that she's going to be in charge of making the decision for buying the kind of bread for our household. So make decisions as a team, but not as a boss, right? Number 3, fight for unity, not to win arguments. Fight for unity, not to win arguments. You've heard this said over and over, and especially in this podcast, if you've been following us and you're part of this family, you know we say this, man, never fight your spouse. Husbands, don't fight your wife. Okay, fight the issue, fight for unity. Don't fight to be right. Don't fight for your glory, but fight for the unity of your marriage. Fight for the unity of your relationship. Fight for the sweetness, the juice of your relationship. So remember that whatever the problem is, the thing that you guys are arguing about, that's what the issue is. Right? YZ is the issue, but not my wife. Okay, and wife, don't think that your husband is the issue, even if the husband, or in this case, the wife, is the one who created the issue. The issue never existed, but you made a bad decision and brought the issue into our marriage. I should recognize, man, now that this thing is here, it's both our problem and we should resolve it together. Does it mean that I can't share my feelings about how I perceive you right now as the person who's brought in the problem? No, I can share those feelings, but again, in a way that's helpful, in a way that's building, in a way that's loving. I can say, hey, listen, this thing that you've done has made me feel this way. And that's probably a better way to approach telling your spouse, your wife in this case, husband, on how you feel about her bringing this issue into your marriage, instead of saying, you are this and you are that. You've done this to us. But instead, I feel this way about this issue that has come into our marriage. Okay? You hear the difference there, right? I feel this way about this issue, as opposed to you did this to us, or you are this kind of person because you caused this in our marriage, right? Or I feel this way because you are this person. No. I feel this way because this issue has come in. Don't point fingers. I fight for unity, and don't fight to win an argument. I think that's going to be, just another helpful tip in how you can live together as spouse, right? As spouses, as husband and wife, as you try and figure out what this thing is going to look like. All right, cool. Next clip, and then you'll see me on the flip side of that, right? Yeah. And do you guys speak about that? Or is this the first time
your friend, does
hearing...
he speak about things? Does he?
And here's the thing, he does.
Oh.
Yes.
He does. Sometimes I get a glimpse of that once a quarter. So once a quarter, I have a timetable. I can approach him. You know how Queen Esther went to the king? Once a quarter, I can.
You go to the king and the king says, here are my emotions. Once a quarter. After this conversation, I'm packing them back. Yes. And you'll see them.
Yes, the next quarter. No, there's a joke I always tell. My husband is not he doesn't, and I don't know if it's a manly thing. He doesn't delve deep into his emotions, which I've come to know as well.
Yes.
And I have to understand and deal with. But there's a time I pushed. It was in our first year of marriage, I think. Yeah, towards Christmas. I really pressed buttons. Like I wanted us to solve the thing now. Now, I pushed. There's a night I couldn't sleep. I got out of the bed. I went to him on the couch. No, we need to solve this.
Yeah.
And he decided.
Beans and bonds where cups form connections. You guys spoke. We just did not hear you, but we listened and we acted. Therefore, every single end of the month in 2025, we are hosting a live gathering for That Husband podcast community. If you're part of this community, part of this family, this is for you. Pull through. It's going to be an amazing time for us to actually connect. Let me tell you one thing that's amazing about this. The entry is free. All right. It is free. You don't have to pay anything. All you have to do is make sure that you book your seat immediately because we are only taking in 200 people. We want it to be big enough to kind of welcome a lot of us, but we also want it to be small enough so that it's intimate, that we can build real connections. So only 200 seats that are limited. Book now. Two ways. One, you can scan the QR code on your screen right now. Or secondly, you can click on the link below and make sure that you book your seat, book your friend's seat, book your spouse's seat, but make sure that you are pulling through to Beans and Bonds, where we're going to be using coffee cups so that we build real bonds and connections. Right? What can you expect? Number one, man, I'm going to be there. It would be dope for us to connect. I know some of you have questions about things I've said on this podcast, and maybe you just want to pick my brain on something. Pull through. It would be dope for you and I to connect. Secondly, we're going to have a guest. Man, people with really infinite wisdom on marriage, on husbandhood, on relationships. We're going to be connecting with them and really gleaning from their wisdom. So pull through for that. Number three, we're going to have a live DJ who's going to be creating the vibe for us. And number four, we are going to be having free coffee. Free entrance, free coffee, pull through. There's a free drink for you so that we can connect together. So 1st of March, Beans and Bonds is going to be happening. So pull through, tell everybody, make sure that you book your spot. All right, peace.
But there's a time I pushed. It was in our first year of marriage, I think. Yeah, towards Christmas. I really pressed buttons. Like I wanted us to solve the thing now. Now, I pushed. There's a night I couldn't sleep. I got out of the bed. I went to him on the couch. No, we need to solve this.
Yeah.
And he decided, oh, you want to solve this? Then he opened up.
Yeah.
I almost stopped him halfway. I wanted us to solve this, but not like
the Chinese fortune cookie says, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly that.
Because you just might get it.
That. Newlyweds, be very careful what you wish for.
Well, you wanted him to express himself emotionally.
Yes.
And he did. So what was the thing? You couldn't handle the emotions?
I couldn't.
Why?
I don't also like too many emotions. I want them to come sprinkling in slowly, small.
Yes.
Yeah, in
Not
bits
quarterly.
in bits I can accommodate. But that day I told him, no, it's fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay, actually. You can keep quiet for 2 weeks. It's okay. I will be okay. And from where I come from, I'm the last girl out of 5. So I have very loud sisters and they talk.
Yes.
So I always used to watch them and I'm considered the quiet one and the one who doesn't talk.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I receive all this that I need to unpack and process. I couldn't. I froze. I froze. But anyway, we worked it out. No, he talks, but it's random.
Yes.
And he'll express himself in ways, times you don't even expect it. Then you're like, oh, you told me this. Can we talk about this?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think most men express themselves. But I think where the disconnect is or the mirror breaks between us and our wives is sometimes our wives just don't know what buttons to press. Because I'm like, I know your husband's heart. I know David's heart.
Why should your buttons change?
They don't change.
No.
They don't change. And here's the thing, we don't know all your buttons as well. Because you would go speak to your girls. There's things you speak to my wife about that you probably couldn't speak to your husband because my wife presses certain buttons in you
100%
that he doesn't. And he's unaware of those. I mean, similar thing. I could sometimes hear my wife, like maybe speak over the phone with her mom or sister or you. And then I'm like, yeah, but I told you that yesterday, but it just didn't land. I said the same thing, but it just didn't land. And so then I'm like, okay, there's certain buttons you guys know how to press.
Yeah.
Where she opens up, and vice versa. I'm like, I think I tend to have a higher emotional IQ. And so I'm like, I'm very aware of my friends' emotional well-being, and I wouldn't be friends with a guy personally who does not open up. You know, and I found that with all my male friends, they open up in different ways from each other.
Mm.
But I've, just living with them, figured out a way where I'm like, okay, if we have this conversation this way,
Mm.
man, he's gonna open up about this thing. If
Mm.
I ask him this way, he's not gonna open up.
Mm.
And so then I found that disconnect in spouses that happens. That you see your husband doesn't open up, and then I'm like, just press that, but you can't.
You must tell us. Maybe you need to meet with all the wives in your circle and tell them, I know your husband's button. I know your husband.
Yeah.
Your husband's button is.
But
Yeah.
you're not gonna use that because you want him to answer or open up his heart the way you would understand and the way you are approaching the thing.
Yeah, true. True.
So I think it's gonna be a harder hill to climb for you to try and which we should. That's what marriage calls us to do. That we
Yeah.
should try and adjust. But it would be a harder and a steep hill.
Yeah. But actually, I understand you because it can't be easy.
Yeah,
Like this is if it's sanctification and that's
yeah,
what it is, it's
yeah,
going to be grueling sometimes.
yeah.
And if the Lord is using this man or this woman to discipline you,
Mm,
then you've got to be able to take it.
yeah.
So yeah, if you know that saying that if you ask God to teach you patience, he's not.
Woo!
Yeah, he
Yeah.
will bring an
He'll
impatient
put you in
person.
traffic.
Exactly. David Kobedi, have you heard my friend? Anyway, so it's one those things.
Yeah.
So it's a long road, and
Yeah.
I think learning and unlearning stuff on the journey
Mhm.
is what sharpens both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, opening up, man, that's definitely a big one. I think again, like the safety one, this is something we need to circle back to and actually make a whole series about, right? We need to make a whole series about this. I think that husbands do open up. I think men open up, right? Men don't spend hours watching soccer, playing PlayStation at the golf course, doing whatever other recreational thing, being at the car wash, being at the Shisanyama, wherever it is, la Baploma corner. I don't think that we spend that much time there just not communicating. We do open up. We do speak to each other. We do share some of our deepest fears, insecurities, but we just do it in a way that, again, from man to man, we've been able to press each other's buttons. We do it in a way that does not make anybody feel vulnerable to the extent that they will feel compromised, right? That my vulnerability here somehow might get me attacked. Because that's what essentially the word vulnerability is. When you hear of militaries speak of vulnerability, if you have a vulnerability in your military, then you know that you need to close that gap because that's where the enemy is going to attack. And so for the man, when we hear the word vulnerability, man, that's why I always say vulnerability can only be given to a wife. And a wife, again, who herself has said, I am going to be here for the long haul. I'm not here to somehow, shortchange you and take your vulnerability and then use it against you. But a wife, again, who's demonstrated, who's shown that when the husband becomes vulnerable, she's not going to use those vulnerabilities to attack him, because that's essentially what vulnerability is. And that's how it translates in the mind of a husband, in the mind of a man. When I think of vulnerability, I'm like, man, I'm giving you all my loopholes. The thing that you can use to kind of break me, man, that's the thing that I'm giving you. I'll give you a biblical metaphor to kind of explain this, but it's actually not a metaphor, it's a truth. But I'm using it as a metaphor to kind of illustrate this point. In 1 Corinthians, Paul speaks about the resurrection of Jesus. And he says that if you want to destroy Christianity, just disprove the resurrection. So Paul kind of hands you the keys and says, if the resurrection is not true, because that's the thing that is holding the faith. If you can disprove that Jesus did not bodily, objectively, historically raise from the grave, then man, you can destroy Christianity. In fact, there's a book called Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, and he goes on a mission for that, right? And so it's a similar thing. Vulnerability means that for a man. I am giving you something that you can use to destroy me with. And so I think men can be vulnerable, but we are vulnerable with other men in ways that we don't feel like they can actually destroy us. Whole spiel to say this: wives, need to find out what those buttons are. The same way, husbands, you need to find out what your wife's buttons are. There's ways in which women generally are wired, there's ways in which men generally are wired. But then at a very subjective, individual, personal level, there's ways in which I am wired that the next husband is not wired. So my wife doesn't have to learn the tactics of how to press the buttons for all men. She needs to know at a general level how men are wired, but at a specific, individual, subjective level, she needs to learn me. And that's what marriage is, this becoming one. She is learning me every single day and how she can press those buttons, and she finds out what they are. And here's where wives can trip up. And I think I said this in this clip, that let's say, you do the hard work of living with me, being with me, you noticing my patterns, when I speak, when I don't speak, what gets me to speak, what gets me to shut down, you kind of figuring out all the stuff. And so when you do, don't try and speak to your husband in ways that are only understandable to you. Speak in ways that will definitely make him feel like he's at the center of the story. And the husbands need to be doing the same thing for their wives. If you want her to open up, make her feel that she's the center of the story. In fact, this is something my wife kind of helped me with. When you are frustrated with somebody, my wife would say, man, listen, we're not justifying anything that this person has done. We see the wrong that they did. But now, in order for you to kind of understand them, man, put them at the center of the story. Right? If they are the main character and they are seeing this whole movie from their eyes, what is it that they're seeing? You've probably heard the old saying, put yourself in somebody's shoes. And man, I think these sayings kind of lose their context and their punch as the generations move. And so I think this is one that we should coin for this generation. I credit to my wife. She says, put the person at the center of the story. What are they seeing if they're the main character? Because right now you're angry because you're the main character, right? And maybe let's kind of dial back. You're not angry as the wife, but right now you want to press your husband's button so that he opens up, but you are doing that as the main character of the story. So put him as the main character of the story and see what he sees. Therefore, you can then understand what makes him open up, what makes him shut down, what makes him speak about his emotions and communicate that with you. Right? Two things to help you on this. Create low pressure conversation zones. Whew, that's a mouthful. I'll say that again. Create low pressure conversation zones. So don't speak to him when he's just come back from work and you want him to tell you about his deepest dark emotions. Okay. I know the natural instinct is when he comes back home, we just want to say, it's just a thing that we say. It's just in our lexicon, in our vocabulary. That's how we speak as people. Hey, tell me how your day was, right? Maybe, and then you've probably asked that 500 times and you're frustrated that he actually doesn't tell you about his day. Well, he can't, because right now he's still under a lot of pressure. So we need to create together, husband and wife, we need to create low pressure conversation zones. What's a low pressure conversation zone? When he's not doing anything that invokes stress, that induces stress, right? So what's the thing that makes him just feel chilled, feel relaxed? What are those zones? And so we need to make sure that in those zones, we are sparking conversations. It could be when you're about to go to bed, right? And so the house is a bit quiet, the kids are gone down to bed, you've done your nightly routine, things are a bit chilled, and you get into the bed, and then that's a low pressure conversation zone. As you're sitting in the bed, you're not going to ask him, crazy, hardcore, difficult questions. But man, this is just the place for us to kind of sit. There's no pressure. There's no work pressure. There's no kids screaming around. There's no, bosses telling him, they need the next email to be answered, etc., etc. It's a low pressure conversation zone. How do you do it? Instead of saying to him, which is again a classical mistake that I think we all make, husbands and wives, but particularly in this case, I'm talking to wives. We make this mistake. We say these 4 words. And we need to talk. Man, when a husband hears those words, we need to talk, that's an atomic bomb. That thing is loaded, right? Everything in him rises up because now he feels like I did something. I need to defend myself. What happened? What did I forget to do? Who did I speak to? Even if he's not doing anything stupid, now he's thinking, what's in my phone? Did she see my email? Did she see my phones? Did she speak to my friends? So try and move away from those four deadly words. We need to talk, right? Instead, use something like this. Okay, man, when we go on a walk, because again, you've chosen a low pressure conversation zone. Okay, next time we go on our walk, I'd love to hear your thoughts on ABC, right? Okay, cool, man. So next time we go for grocery, I mean that's probably grocery shopping is a high pressure zone for a husband. Anyway, so the find a low pressure zone, right? Maybe the next time we go to the bird park. Okay, next time we go to the bird park and we're just gonna be throwing stones into the pond, man, I would love to hear your thoughts on something. I'd love to hear your thoughts on. I'd love to hear how you critically think about this thing. Right, man. That invites him. I know as a man, when my wife says, "Man, I would love to get to hear your thoughts on this." That statement is empowering to a man because then I go into my leadership. I want to teach and disciple. My wife wants to hear my thoughts, right? And so then I'm ready to give my thoughts, and it's gonna be in a low pressure conversation zone. Then I'm gonna give all my thoughts instead of just saying that we need to talk. Instead of being direct and saying, "Tell me how you feel." What? But I don't like, what do you mean? How do I feel? But instead, if you would ask me, "Hey, man, I would love to hear your thoughts on what anger is, just objectively, not asking you about your anger, but I've been pondering on the concept of anger. I've been pondering on the concept of, what empathy is." Right, friend of mine, a very dear brother to me. In fact, I'm going to plug him now. Jabulani Zwani. He's written a book about being an empath. Right, and so I'm like, man, ask your husband that. I just want to hear your thoughts about empathy. Whew, that really gets us going, right? And then we think, yeah, we don't have to talk about that now because again, you've asked me that in a low pressure conversation zone in our bed, and you saying the next low pressure conversation zone we're going to find ourselves in. Please consider giving me your thoughts on what empathy looks like. You've given me homework. It's given me a task. We like completing tasks, and therefore I'm going to come next time to our low conversation pressure zone, and I'm going to tell you about what I think of empathy. Number 2, use breadcrumbs instead of flooding. Use breadcrumbs instead of flooding. What is flooding? You angry as a wife, or you anxious, or you are feeling insecure, or you are feeling pressed, and there's an urgent matter that you want to address. And so as I come in the house, one, no low pressure conversation zone, but instead you are flooding me. I'm pressured in this environment, and then you flood me with thoughts. Okay, what's this? What happened here? Bah, bah, bah. This is what I found, etc., etc. Man, I'm going to shut down. I'm not going to open up. Forget it. I'm gonna shut down. And in fact, I came back from work. I know you coming back from work as well. You have stresses, so I'm not saying like we're the only ones who work. So don't get that confused or twisted. I'm just speaking from a man's perspective. I'm coming in from work. I'm tired, and kids are running around. I'm happy to be home because again, in this podcast, we've spoken about how we show up as men when we come back from work, and we come into the house. We're not grumpy. We've kind of put that guy at the. We've left him in the car. We put him at the gate, and we coming in. We want to show up. We know that this is not going to be a low pressure conversation zone. Kids are running around. You might also just be, de-stressing from your day, and you trying to get into your evening routine. And I'm coming into that environment, and I want to kind of elevate the temperature and make people happy and make my kids, feel my presence as I walk in. So I'm already tuned in for that. But if you flood me, man, that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for me to actually open up about anything for the rest of that evening into the night. I probably won't open up. And then it's probably going to take me a couple of days because, man, that thing really trips us up. It trips us up. So leave breadcrumbs. What are breadcrumbs, man? Leave ideas. Right, and I've been thinking about this one thing, I've been feeling this way about this thing, and it's just a little breadcrumb there, and then I'm like intrigued. Oh, so you feeling this way about our finances? Okay, little breadcrumb, man. I feel positive about where our savings are. Oh, okay, it's a breadcrumb. You didn't ask me to give you a spreadsheet about where our finances are. Or, hey man, I'm feeling, just a little bit concerned. So I didn't say I'm worried. That's loaded. I just feel a little bit concerned about our finances. Oh, cool. What's the concern? Yeah, we could probably speak about it, when we go to the bird park, going back to the low pressure conversation zone. Oh, okay, cool. You've given me a breadcrumb, something small to think about. And then you can kind of build on these breadcrumbs. Maybe we'll go to the park on Saturday, but on Monday, you're giving me a breadcrumb. Tuesday, you're giving me another breadcrumb. Wednesday, another breadcrumb. Thursday, Friday, other breadcrumbs. By the time we get to the bird park on Saturday and we speaking, man, you can kind of remind me of all these breadcrumbs. But best believe you've been engaging me. So I know these breadcrumbs. I'll keep them because I'm not flooded. Not flooded, and I'm not always in high pressure conversation zones, but I'm in low pressure conversation zones. So I'm prone to remember these things so that we actually sit down and have the conversation, right? Thirdly, ask for his perspective, not just his feelings. Okay, I said I'll give you two things here, but here's the third one. Ask for his perspective, not just his feelings. Okay, we tend to think like millennials. Okay, so generally, psychologists, clever people, people who study culture and the different generations say that millennials tend to say, "Yo, take capture my mind, and then I'll give you my heart." Okay, entertain my mind, massage my mind, give me thoughts, shape my worldview, and then I'll give you my heart. Gen Z, on the other hand, says, capture my heart, and then I'll give you my mind. Okay, give me experiences, show me how this thing works, and then I'll tell you my thoughts about this thing. Okay, so men tend to be like millennials. We say, man, we want to give our perspectives first, and it's through our perspectives that we then communicate what we feel. So we want to tell you the big grand thing, and then from that big grand thing, we want to communicate what our emotions are about this big grand thing. But we need something to anchor us. Compared to women that can dive straight into, man, this is how I feel. And then you can work your way back to, I feel this way because of this thing. But what we say is this thing, and therefore we feel this way about that thing, right? So instead of asking me about my feelings, ask me my perspective. My perspective on anger, my perspective on empathy, my perspective on finances. Because another thing that does to us as men, it kind of lays out the framework, and it's from the framework that we can speak about anything else, right? So keep those three things in mind, man. We coming to the end of this video. This is the last clip, and then we will just call this a day. But I think it's been so beneficial just to celebrate husbands, but also just to hear from our wives. It's been super dope. So here's the final clip, right? So for you, has there been a particular fear when it comes to success and struggle? And maybe generally, what are some fears that wives have towards their husband's successes or struggles?
One thing that comes to mind is the fact that I want my husband to know that we are together
Mhm,
through thick and thin. Sometimes I feel like husbands or my husband would take on the financial burden
mhm,
of providing and
mhm,
securing a future and all these things
mhm.
by himself. I'm like, but if you believe we're one in these other areas, we surely are one in this area. But
Sure.
I think it's a man thing. I don't know.
Mhm,
You would tell me that
mhm,
men feel they have to provide. They
mhm,
have to. You're not going to go to your mother-in-law and say, "I failed to
mhm,
take care of your daughter." You can have
mhm.
her for a few months.
Sure. I
Do you have
you
a spare bedroom for
you
a
you can
daughter?
borrow her.
Yes. Please borrow her for a few. And I understand that. But I'm like, two are better than
Yes.
one. So
Yes.
it's almost I feel like I fear that sometimes he feels like he has to carry the burden by
Mhm,
himself.
mhm,
And yet we are a team. No
mhm.
one is against. If we're caught in the rut of always being the one with that burden or that
Yes.
ego or that you have to provide, you have to be the one with a source of income,
Mhm.
it strains. And you can see it with some around our friend group, people who overwork, who over
Yes.
push,
Sure.
and you're like, guys, you're together.
Hmm.
And hopefully not forgetting that you're a team.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
Yeah, it is a heavy burden on men. um, and I think it's somebody can say it's self-imposed, but I'm like, I think it's just genetic. I think we come out of our mother's wombs with that.
Really?
Yeah,
Sure, that's hard.
provision, another big one. Another big one, I think that's the thing that I'm noticing with this episode, that there's just a lot of big themes that we definitely need to circle back to. Provision is a big thing, man. And I think more than what provision is here, it was the feeling that men have towards us providing. Husbands, feelings towards what it means for us to be providers. Right? Two things here, man. To the husband, I know that we feel the weight of provision, the weight of providing, the weight of wanting to show up for those that we love. Contrary to popular belief, there's many husbands who really want to take care of their wives, and just because of the state of our economy and the country that we live in, they can't provide at the rate, at the level that they desire. But man, they there with the little that they have, with what God has really enabled them to work hard to attain. They want to love their wives and take care of them, and so we feel this pressure to provide. And maybe we also should reframe the languaging. So we feel this privilege differently. Okay. We feel the privilege to provide differently from our wives, just because of how we are wired. God has given us, both the ability to work the garden. Adam and Eve were both supposed to work the garden, but there is a sense in which Adam, especially even after the curse in verses, in chapter 3, rather, so in verses 15 all the way, when God speaks to them about what their consequences to sin are, God kind of focuses on Adam's work. And that's not a coincidence, because we do feel the privilege of providing in a very peculiar way compared to our wives, compared to our female counterparts. And so I say that to say this: wives, you need to understand that about us. Eleanor in this episode is very aware of that. And she wants to somehow alleviate, the pressure from Grace. But even if she tries to, I mean, I think we will still feel again the privilege of providing in a very different way. We're gonna carry that weight very differently, and so I call it a privilege because in one sense, yeah, there is a level at which it is stressful. It is stressful for us to think, man, if I don't work, things aren't going to move here. Right? It is stressful because that's just what life is, and it is a result of the fall. And that's why I reference Genesis 3, because God said, man, now our work is going to come with sweat. Okay, it's going to be hard for us to labor the ground that we came from. It's going to be tough, and it is tough, and so we're going to feel that definitely. But I want to say again, it's a privilege, man. It's a privilege for us to even be able to work. Yes, you can consider just the state of our economy. There's people who are underemployed, meaning that they desire to be employed, but for that specific industry that they're in, man, there's just not enough jobs for them. But generally, we know in our country, that's a problem that we are facing, of unemployment overall, but underemployment is also a thing. So we want to acknowledge that and just say, man, there's probably other ways that you can go make a living, legal ways, ways that don't get you into tight spots and tough situations, and ways that are not going to leave your family in dire straits and compromising situations. So find ways that you can provide for your family, but man, we're going to feel that. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And I just want to say to wives, acknowledge that. Another thing that you can do for your husband in celebrating him this Valentine's is just to acknowledge that, so just a thank you. Listen, you might earn more than your husband, but just go say to him, man, thank you. Thank you for the fact that you work. If he doesn't work, pray for him, encourage him, and just say to him, man, I see your desire to want to work, and I understand how you feel the weight of that privilege different from me. And I want to say thank you that you're not even fighting, that weight. Yes, he might not have work now, but he's feeling the pressure of wanting to get work. And so you can celebrate him for that you're not even fighting off that pressure, because some men fight that pressure off and then decide, man, I'm just going to hang around and drink my life away, right? And yes, he's numbing himself, and that's the solution he's found, instead of actually pressing into that pressure of that weight as he experiences unemployment or underemployment. So he's drinking or he's smoking, and he's doing crazy things just to numb the pain. And so if that's where your husband is, pray for him, and we're going to pray for him. We're going to think about him. But we're also saying to you, find a way to kind of, encourage him and say, man, we're gonna do this together. If he hasn't, found ways to numb his pain, but he's just sitting under that weight, Yeah, encourage that guy. Hold his hand. Thank him. Look him in the eyes and say, man, thank you that you haven't succumbed to numbing this pain in ways that are not going to be helpful for you and unhealthy for us as a couple and a family. Thank you for sitting under this pressure. I know that you feel the weight of providing way different from me. Right? Number two, to wives who love their husbands, and you love seeing your husbands carry this weight, man, we want to say to you, shout outs to you. As we celebrate husbands, as we encourage you to celebrate husbands, we are celebrating you. If you love seeing your husband be a man who works, right? Man, we want to celebrate you, right? And we want to say thank you to you. And I'm not saying if you think that your husband is not supposed to work, that there's anything wrong with that for you. That's up to you and your endeavors, all right? but we strongly feel and believe that men should be working, and we're not saying we're not judging the quality of their work, meaning it doesn't have to be a high-paying job, it doesn't have to be a fancy corner office job in some fancy corporate or whatever. But if a man works, man, that's attractive, that's desirable, that's going to be a good testimony, not just for himself, but for those that he's leading, for his kids particularly, and for the community around him. Just to see a man who is getting dirty with his hands. And again, it might be an old saying and you might think it's cliche because your grandmother said it, but idle hands are the devil's playground. Your husband ends up cheating because agaspani, right? He's not even just getting himself occupied with some, yes, you might be unemployed or underemployed, but get yourself, man, working around the house, find work. If you belong to a church community, go there twice a week, 3 times a week, volunteer. But as a man, do not just sit down and not do anything. And so for the wives who love to see their husbands work, we want to celebrate you. We want to say thank you to you, to wives like Eleanor, who are like, man, I see my husband carrying this weight of this privilege and differently from me, and I want to say thank you to him. We want to say thank you to you. Thank you to you, right? So we truly appreciate you, and we want to say continue championing your husband in this area.
Oh, no, actually, I haven't said to him. My boss asked me yesterday, what am I grateful for? And I told him my husband.
Cheers, Nakel.
That was even before I knew what I was going to talk about on this podcast.
Cheers, no one ever knows what they're going to talk about on this podcast.
That's why you're crazy. That's why I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep because of you.
It's so that we can have an honest conversation.
I hear you. No. He's shown up. Like the past couple of weeks, I've been out. Like I couldn't cook. I couldn't stand for long. I couldn't bath myself. I couldn't. The guy was there.
Sure.
Oh, do you want to bath now? Or let's go bath now.
Yeah.
What do you want to eat? And
Sure.
he will make that.
Come
And
on now.
yeah, so he is really shown up.
A Ugandan African man.
Imagine.
Cooking,
Exactly.
cleaning,
Hey.
Yeah.
So from where I come from,
Hey,
he
his
deserves
street cred just went down. He's not going to be welcome back to Uganda.
my aunties and uncles would watch and say, you couldn't even do this. Anyway, yes, I couldn't. But my husband, and maybe I could have pushed myself to do these things, but he's there. And he was willing. So I really celebrate men who show up for their wives, especially in times when either they've given birth, they can't do some things. Yeah, just taking on the mantle and saying, this is us.
Sure.
And it's not about you alone or me alone. It's us. And running with it.
And what would you have to say to wives who don't have that?
Wives who don't have that?
It's probably 4 years in and she's like, and this thing is going nowhere slowly. Or 10 years in, or 20 years in. And it's like, I waited, I thought.
Maybe I should ask you, that husband, because it's a, maybe you sit with yourself and say, what can't I handle? And only you knows what you can't handle. I don't know. And if it gets to a point where you're compromised by faith, physically, you're in danger, then maybe decisions need to be made. I would tell a Christian woman to pray, because I know prayer changes things, but more importantly, have those conversations. What's the worst that can happen if you don't have any fears of being physically hit, but your husband has time to listen? Talking so much and resolves things. And I think in your season 1, it it was probably one of the things you were hammering in. Just have those conversations, talk. Tell the person exactly how you feel and where you're at. He might not be able to give you that, and that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But he might be angas about what's happening in your heart and in your mind, and he wants to do better. So yeah, talk.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in into this episode particularly, but we want to thank you. We want to thank you for tuning in into this whole series. We want to do this every year to always celebrate yellow as our new red. And at some point in year 5 or 6, it's not going to be the new red. It's just going to be the color that we use to celebrate the husbands on this podcast and anywhere else that we find husbands. And so we want to say thank you to you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the comments, for the engagements. Thank you for sharing this content with other people. Thank you for all the feedback that we're getting directly from the comment section in our inboxes, but also just from people that we meet in the shops and the streets, at malls, anywhere we find ourselves, and somebody comes to us and they like, man, my name has become that husband now, right? People forget that I actually have a gamma, I have a name, right? And people are like, man, that husband. We're like, man, that's dope, right? Why? Because if we just echo that in South Africa, we would have, again, just continued winning. Man, if people could champion husbands, if people can say, man, we want to see more of those husbands. We want to see that husband, that husband, that husband, that husband, that husband. Oh, we're pretty dope, man. So thank you so much for celebrating husbands this Valentine. And we want you to not just stop here, continue celebrating them, right? Man, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you're watching this, man, something is happening in 2 weeks' time. If you haven't heard about it, we don't know what rock you've been under. But Beans and Ponds is coming. Beans and Ponds is going to be our monthly gathering where we will meet in person, and we're only making room for 200 people. So if this is something you're seeing now, it's because there's still room. But I could tell you now that room is shrinking. So make sure that you pause this and you go book your seat. It's free. The only thing you need to do is make sure that you secure your seat. Book it right now. Beans and Bonds, where cups form connections. We're going to form connections together with coffee cups as we have meaningful conversations and we connect together as the community here of That Husband podcast, right? So let's continue celebrating husbands who know better so that they can do better. From me and the team here at That Husband podcast, we'll see you next week. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. If you haven't hit the notification bell, do so that you're updated on every single episode that we drop every Wednesday at 11:30. We'll see you next time. From me and the team here at That Husband podcast, continue celebrating husbands who know better so that they can do better. All right, peace.